that, there were so many other characters, and even like, tertiary characters that needed to have their FaceTime, that, like you almost go entire episodes without seeing them or seeing them do anything important. They certainly had their epic moments and things like that, but like it's felt, their absence is felt considering they're the main characters. So some stuff like that, but
we can save most of that for next week.
Next week. Woo! Yeah. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Apparently we're going to deconstruct that, and we're going to put the spotlight on Justin because he's the anti-anime guy kind of, and he's the one that was slow to watch it all, so I hope you enjoy that.
Yes. What were you saying? Freddy foreshadowing? Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah. Right. It's called a teaser in this case, I think, and so stay tuned for next week. Hopefully our hero hosts survive this week, where I'm also still in the spotlight, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah,
because this one's
and Andreas isn't here to do this freaking crap, so that's why we have to do it clumsily.
Right. Yeah. So thanks, we appreciate that. Mystery lover that wears Andreas, like we're chopped liver. So, fun fact about moving days off of your normally scheduled days and times, that Saturdays can sometimes be hard, and picking a random Sunday with not very much notice isn't going to help either. So I'm mostly the guy that's done the reading and the notes for the writer's room thing, and this has been my brainchild. So it's like, if I'm not here, that section of the show doesn't really run so hot, if at all. And unfortunately I had some different understandings. It was my youngest birthday party this weekend, and I thought it was going to be in the evening. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, we're doing the thing at 10 a.m. And I'm like, you got to let me know that, because I have commitments. So, so that was a whole thing, but hard carry indeed. So along those lines, to get us into it, where we left off last time was Harry and Leah and the stone table and the battleground. He used his sight to see that. We joked that in order for somebody to create the wizard sight that Harry uses in that scene, we're just going to give him some extracurricular prescription medicine and send them to a cabin somewhere in Colorado probably, and just be like, come back with whatever melted your face over the weekend. So lots of energy, greens, blues, yellows, golds, whatever, stuff like that.
Do you have it in front of you what the stone table looks like a physical description from the book?
I don't know if I had pulled the description. I usually do. I got one of Harry like touching it, right? But I think it's basically, let's see. Yeah, it's basically something like waist high, and it's really gigantic, to the point where I was like, I was trying to remember if the stone table was something we call it, or if it really is something Harry calls it. One of the other things that I do remember, it's like, it's, I think, a couple of feet thick, and it is actually propped up on like stone pillars, but they're like, the legs are made up of stacked stones. And then basically it's just like this giant slab of marble. Sorry, Freudian slip. But
I was looking at really dumb, weird history, folk magic things on Wikipedia, and I don't remember exactly where it got me there, but there was like stone tables in stories, and I found a picture of one. It's just like, oh, that's the thing. That's the stone table that's in my head. And it was like somewhere in like Celtic France or something. And it was like, a few feet across, and it was circular, and it had pillars on every side versus like having a pillar in the center. And it was just like, what was the description of it? It's like, that's the thing that Jim found and pulled for it.
Right. Let's see. I don't, because one thing is that I don't recall it being circular, right? So
all right, I always thought of it as circular.
Yeah, that's why I was like, okay, well, apparently let's just take a moment and
The sound of Googling.
Yeah, no, I'm reading. This is the book and everything, but let's see. So he's using his vision. Apparently, the first reference for Stone Table is like. Why do you keep doing that? It it keeps jumping it. Okay, so here we go. I think I found it. So Google was screwing me. It was I was trying to search within the document and it kept jumping into the second reference, and it's like that's where he's opened his site. So the paragraph is: I kept turning and found behind me a stone, gray and ominous, and enormous, startlingly solid amid the drifting white. Behind me a stone, gray and ominous and enormous, startlingly solid among all the drifting white. I took a step back from it and saw the shape of it: a table made of a massive slab of rock, the legs made of more stones, as thick as the pillars of Stonehenge. Writing writhed across the surface of the stone, runes that looked familiar, Norse maybe. Some of them looked more like Egyptian. They seemed like something from several different sources, leaving them unreadable. Lightning flashed again through the ground as a wave of blue-white light flooded over the table through runes, lighting them like Las Vegas neon for a moment. So yeah, it's kind of vague, right? And yeah, it's gigantic because it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like maybe we get another good description of it in changes, right? But yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
I've always kind of envisioned it as this kind of like monolithic theme thing. Apparently, I'm just going to make all sorts of Freudian slips today, but later, like in a couple of paragraphs, he gets another view of it with his sight. So he talks about, you know, fields of red and gold and bright green stood against empty, dead blocks of blue, purple, pale white. Pattern had formed in them, a structure to the conflict that was not wholly complete, most of a chessboard. Only at the center at the table was the pattern broken, a solid area of summer's power in green and gold around the stone table, while winter's dark crystalline ice slowly pressed closer somehow in time with the almost undetectable motion of the stars overhead. So yeah. It's very metaphorical through here beyond like the colors of the energies, because the next paragraph is: so I saw it. I got a look of what I was up against, the naked strength of the two queens of fairy, and it was bigger than me. Every ounce of strength I could have summoned would have been no more than a flickering spark beside either of those blazing fountains of light and magic. Yeah, so it's more metaphorical than it is, literal or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, either interpretation has equal weight in the sense that like we don't get a description, right? It could be circular. I think most of my tables are square, so I think of it actually rectangular in this instance, because what I have imagined is that it's thick and like gigantic, right? Like this isn't just a kitchen table or something along those lines. And that might be the description of like the legs being as thick around as the legs like the monoliths of Stonehenge or whatever. Those are several people in diameter and things like that. So it's just like, I don't know, I always think of it to be maybe not football field sized, but just like definitely house sized at a minimum, just something gigantic. But
yeah, I'm trying to find what it might have been that I was looking at and having difficulties. But I did find there's this page of Stone Table on Wikipedia that is about C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. That apparently there's a stone table in that, and it is square. It seems to be a very specific, important thing in that story. I haven't read those books. I've read a couple of them, but like, I'm not going to count the years because that can make me depressed. So it could be that he was pulling from something like that. It could be that C.S. Lewis was pulling from something else, but that one does seem to be square. There's a recreation in like C.S. Lewis's old house or something that is a square thing with a gigantic crack in the middle, and that seems to be significant. If I can find that image, I will share it onto Discord. So pay money to see that or something. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, pay us to do your research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have always pictured this stone table as circular, and I don't know why.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because it's like I could see it as circular if we're talking about like flows of energies, but I could also see it as like square or rectangular if, you know, it's something to be competed against, right? Like what you were describing, there's a crack in the middle. That's where, you know, winter and summer's energies, you know, meet more or less, or something along those lines. You know, I could see something like that. And so, you know, and maybe it's pulling from like the description of like the energies around it forming a chessboard, right? And so a square, you know, or rectangular shape fits better on a chessboard, you know, in a way. I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong and vice versa, right? It's just like that's what I had imagined. And like every time I go read it, I feel like because there's a lack of concrete, you know, description, I'm always like re-anchoring my understanding, right? Because I had in my mind that it was like stacks of stones, but that's not really supported by the material, right?
Yeah,
just that they're big legs, you know.
In this exercise of like, if we're going to make it a TV show, what kind of stone table are we building? Apparently we would have thought about this and not known it.
Right.
I do feel attached to the idea of a circular stone table, and I can make up reasons to justify it. Like it is like kind of in the way that like a calendar changing of seasons, it's literally changing the seasons. And all of the runes around it could be some part of that. I don't know, in Changes, when he kills Lloyd Slate, like the idea of it being filled up with blood and the runes on it. It seems like that's a really fun image to do it, especially if it was going circular and filling up around it. But yeah, it all depends.
Sure. Let's see. Apparently playing with my Zoom really makes Google angry. So, yeah. Okay. So moving on then.
Yeah.
You know, so basically that's kind of where we left off, with chapter 24. So basically like at the end of chapter 23, he more or less gets in an argument with Leah after he sees everything, and it was like, well, I need to go talk to the mothers is part of the culmination of that argument. And she's like, I don't disagree, but that's beyond my power, so good luck out there, you know, try to keep your head down, not get smushed. And also probably in his subconscious, you know, because of what he's seen, when he gets back to Chicago, he starts muttering to himself about being in over his head. He needs to get a hold of Ebenezer and let him know, like, look, pretty much I've done this. If you guys rest the rest of this on my shoulders, it's going to be bad for me, for Chicago, for the world, you know, like we need more people, and that sort of thing. So,
and so he calls headquarters.
Yeah, he ends up going back to his apartment. I was gonna say, yeah, I think the Blue Beetle, you know, breaks down too. So he basically has to take a cab back. So yeah, and my car died again. So that's when he starts muttering, over your head, Harry, this is too big for you to handle alone. So chapter 24 starts with him actually looking at the dead Blue Beetle, or temporarily, you know, unalived and inconvenienced Blue Beetle
in its Phoenix impersonation and beginning stages of.
Yeah, or end, because cycles, but yeah, it's currently ashen, this Phoenix, and you know, hopefully in a couple of days. But yeah, so he called a wrecker and then got a cab back to his apartment, paying for everything with Meryl's advance. Yay, backstory. Once he got there, he got a Coke out of the icebox, put fresh food out for Mister, and changed his kitty litter. It wasn't until I had dug around under the kitchen sink, gotten out the bottle of dishwashing soap, and blown the dust off of it that I realized I was stalling. So, yeah, he glowered at the phone and said, pride goeth before the fall, Harry. Pride can be bad. It can make you do stupid things. So Then he calls in. He tries to get a hold of Ebenezer. He introduces himself as Dresden. So, of course, they hand the phone off to a waiting Morgan. You failed then, Dresden, Morgan stated. His tone gave me a good mental picture of the smile on his smug face. Stay where you are until the wardens arrive to escort you to the senior council for judgment. So basically, they go back and forth, the normal pissing match. I'm not going to, to kind of belabor this, but Morgan tears into him. Morgan's a piece of shit, especially right here. It's like, This is one of those things. It's like, if you listened for 30 seconds and you had just not been a terrible human being, this could have gone entirely differently. But he hates Dresden so much and everything that's gone on. Like he tears into Dresden for being the exception to every rule and all of this other stuff. Harry does try to reason with him, but there's a little bit of history there. So he probably says some things that could have been unsaid. And then he says, Morgan, I just need to speak with Ebenezer. Let him decide if no. What? No, you won't evade justice this time, Snake. This is your trial. You will see it through without attempting to influence the senior council's judgment. So now he's trying to plead, but the gate's already shut. Morgan is not going to listen to any kind of reason. So, and then this is where he drops, like, someone I dearly cared for was at Archangel Dresden, and this time your lies aren't going to get you out of what's coming to you. And then he hung up the phone.
That's why I like the idea of Komori being Morgan's ex-girlfriend or something instead of Elaine.
Sure.
Because it would just really piss him off and be weird.
Yeah. Yeah, the paragraph that I picked out was the next one anyway, but yeah, I stared at the receiver for a second before snarling with rage and slamming it down on the end table over and over until the plastic broke in my hands. It hurt. I picked up the phone and threw it against the stone of the fireplace. It shattered, its bell chiming drunkenly. I kicked the heaped mess of my living room, scattered old boxes, empty cans of Coke, books, papers, and startled cockroaches. After a few minutes of that, I was panting, and some of the blind, frustrated anger had begun to recede. Bastard, I growled. That pig-headed, bigoted, self-righteous bastard. So, yeah. So then he starts to think, because, I tell everybody, step one's always panic. You got to get the panic out of the way. And then step two is start coming up with a plan and start to think. So, he decides to go cool off in the shower. So ladies, calm down. But he starts thinking, he's trying to figure out if there's another way he can get in touch with Ebenezer, if he's under warden security, and he's sure that he and the rest of the senior council were, that would not be easy. He debated asking Murphy for help. This is all internal dialogue. So apparently we're going to get like a 15-minute scene of him in the shower for this episode. And then, not much. So then he gets dressed. Then, basically I think what it should be is like, he breaks the phone and everything. We go into the shower for, I don't know, 30 seconds. You get the picture, not steamy, because it never is with Dresden.
Right.
And then it goes
to be blue at the end.
Right. And then it goes to a montage. So I got out my big sports bag, the kind you haul hockey gear around in. Into it went my blasting rod, my staff, my sword cane, along with a backpack stocked with some candles, matches, a cup, a knife, a cardboard cylinder of salt, a canteen of blessed water, and various other bits of magical equipment I could use as needed. I threw in a box of old iron nails and a solid steel Craftsman claw hammer with a black rubber grip, and put a couple of pieces of chalk in my pocket. So, yeah, my notes jump because it's like maybe 30 seconds later, I'm like, that's not actually what happens here. So, but yeah, so he basically, dons the bag, goes into the living room and wrought the spell that would lead me to one of the very few only people who might help. So half an hour days, another cabbie. Yeah, not yet, just scene change, I guess. So, And basically his tracking spell leads him to Elaine. She's chilling, eating continental breakfast from her hotel somewhere, and she's sipping coffee and reading a paperback novel.
Very chill during
Right.
the whole end of the world thing.
Yeah, Harry walks up. Morning, Harry, how did you find me? I got to thinking the same thing last night. I said, how did you find me, that is? And I realized that you hadn't found me. You'd found my car. You were inside it and nearly unconscious when I got back to it, so I looked around the car. I pulled the cap to a tire's air valve out of my pocket and showed it to her. And I found one of these was missing. I figured you were probably the one that took it and used it to home in on the Blue Beetle. So I took one of its mates from the other tires and used it to home in on the missing one.
You know, it'd be great if instead of the Blue Beetle dying just for whatever mysterious smoke coming out of the engine, if he got a flat tire because she took the cap off.
Sure.
And now he has to pay cabs to get everywhere because she broke his car. And so he could be angry at her about that.
Right. Maybe. Yeah. Yep. So he confronts her because she's running, basically. You are a veritable wizard of the obvious, Harry. So I feel well motivated to run. Do you really think a plane ticket will get you away from the Queens? It'll get me away from Ground Zero, and that's enough. What was that?
She's willing to get on a plane.
Right. That's fair. That's an interesting observation. Yeah. So yeah, definitely airline tickets. So maybe she's just not as bad a wizard as Harry is. So
definitely true. But just I'd still like, I don't, at what level do you take the risk of a plane instead of like something that isn't flying?
what are those handcuffs that suppress magical abilities?
Oh, the manacles.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just has them handy. That'd be interesting. That would be,
Oh,
try to get that through airport security.
Elaine seems like the kind of girl to have handcuffs. So that's all I'm saying. You're welcome. All right. So
Not fun-time handcuffs.
how? Yeah. Well, I mean, these ones have thorns, so it really depends on how into that you are. So
Yeah.
it's all part of the same subgenre, right? But yeah. So long story short, whatever the case may be, she had a pair of plane tickets, I think. So either, she was running with somebody, or, maybe she was going to do a layover or something. But yeah, so Harry is a boy, so he's eating through the scene. I think he's cleaning up what's left of her breakfast.
Opportunistic.
But yeah, I mean, there's like 2 or 3 things that, regardless of what's going on around you, you should try to make time for, if possible. Sleep, but not always. Using the restroom and eating, like if you're running into the apocalypse, you should make sure that all of those things are full or empty as the situation requires,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But she does, after he's mopping up her scraps, she does go back and get another plate for him and tell him to eat too. So but yeah, tell you what, you stay here and feel smug. I'll get another plate and be back when you're done. So so they're talking about why he's there, what he's looking for. Yeah, he didn't know who had done it, but he's worked out that it was probably Lloyd Slate. And then he describes like figuring out the knife, I don't know, like 20 chapters too late. Yeah, Slate, he was fetching my blood for her so that she could work a spell on me. She tried to cover it, but I saw her shiver. He probably tailed me out of that party. Thank the stars I used fire. So I'm just trying to see if there's any other nuggets here, because my notes jumped considerably. But but basically the gist of it is through this conversation they're comparing notes, they're talking about, you know, their current battle scars and stuff like that, and then you know, he figures that she might have a way to get to the mothers, um and so it's like, you mean you want to talk to the mothers? You know, from Elaine. I nodded. I figured they might let a few things slip about how things work because I'm an idiot, but I don't know how to get there. I thought you might be able to ask someone in Summer. No, no, they won't help. No, I'm not going to see the mothers, Harry. It's insane. They're too strong. They could kill you, worse than kill you, with a stray thought. At this point, I'm already over my head. It doesn't matter how deep the waters get from here, I grimaced. Besides, I don't really have a choice. You could run. So, more banter and stuff like that. So, you know, it's fun. It's their characters and whatnot, but I'm going to just be stuck reading this if we just keep going that route. So,
and I do find it interesting that she has a route to the mothers when Leah does not.
Yeah, right. I don't recall. Let's see. I'm sure they cover it, but oh, yeah. All she says is she let out a subdued laugh before withdrawing her hand and smiling. I've got a favor left to me. I'll call it in. Wait here. And then 5 minutes later, she was back. All right, outside.
Right. So he basically has a shot in the dark of maybe she has more information than he does.
Right.
And then she basically, what she's doing is talking to Aurora, and Aurora is setting up a way.
Almost certainly. Yes.
Yeah, because Aurora needs the unraveling. And like what Elaine is doing is making sense. It's just like he really should have thought about like, how does Elaine have a route to the mothers when Leah does not, who is second only to Mab?
Right. Well, and like acknowledging that it's almost certainly Aurora that she's talking to, or Aurora's people or whatever. Why do they wait so long? They've got him in a car. They could take him freaking anywhere, but they wait until they get to Ferry, until he bypasses the mother's unicorn. Oh, wait, it's not. And then comes back out with the information. Oh, because they needed him to get the unraveling. They say that basically. And yeah.
The mothers knew what was going on, but Harry kind of needed to be the useful idiot going around of like, but I need this thing. I need the unraveling. What am I doing? To be given it. Aurora couldn't just walk up and demand it.
Yep.
I mean, I feel certain that she couldn't, but I actually don't know why she couldn't, other than the fact that, like, how dare you do such a thing, and the mothers would smush her. But
yeah, I mean, why would the mothers give it to her? Because the unraveling is for,
it's
what's
for
her
Lily.
Face? Aurora is the one that petrified her.
Yeah, but
so they'd be like, oh yeah, here's the thing you need to undo the shit you did, you know. So,
but no matter what, they need to do that, because no matter what, the Summer Knight's mantle is stuck petrified, and so giving it to Dresden, giving it to Aurora, either way the Summer Knight's mantle is unbound that way. And so it's like Aurora's really trying to play with the fiction that the emissaries are doing things and not her, trying to hide behind it, I guess. But other than like a reflexive nature of doing cat's paws, she could have gotten the unraveling from the mothers. They already knew what she had done.
We're way off the deep end here, but to continue the free fall, and I'm not even talking the digression, I'm talking about like the theory crafting here. Maybe Aurora couldn't do it because the mothers knew, and because she's one of the queens, the mothers could affect her. And so if she shows up and they know all the shit that she's done, maybe, you know, they're able to sequester her and, you know, try to cure her, just beat the shit out of her, a dozen other things that are possible, but they can't hurt a mortal. So she sends one of the emissaries, and that gives her the shield.
Valid. So, she is infected right now, and it could be like staying away from something that could try to purge the infection, as much as she does or does not understand herself right now. So that's fair. Maybe it just needs to be stated a little bit more.
Sure.
Maybe
no, yeah,
yeah.
it there's definitely plenty of wiggle room in the information that we have here. Like, we're making some plausible but still assumptions that Elaine called Aurora. She might mention it when, in 2 or 3 scenes when he's all captured and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right,
so getting
on
us
to the unicorn.
getting us on track. When they walk out, he takes stock of her magical accessories, and then she looked at his gym bag, still going with all the phallic foci. Staff and rod, they make me feel all manly.
That's a line that needs to stay in.
Yes, yeah, that's why it needed to be highlighted. So all right, so this is where my notes picked up again, pretty much at the end of the chapter. So maybe 30 seconds later, I heard the clopping of hooves on blacktop. A carriage rolled into sight, drawn by a pair of horses. One of them was the blue-white color of a drowned corpse, and its breath steamed in the air. The other was grass green, its mane sown with wildflowers. The carriage itself looked like something from Victorian London, all dark wood and brass filigree, and no one was driving it. The horses came to a halt directly before us and stood there, stamping their feet and tossing their manes. The door to the carriage swung open in silence. No one was inside.
That should come back. That's fun.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to include it, because it's like, when you do the urban fantasy stuff, this is the stuff that like shatters through the veil, at least for the characters and for the audience, right? No one else in Chicago sees this, but like, think about the bus scene from Harry Potter, right? Where they're just like driving down in that magical bus and all that weird shit is happening and whatever. And it's just like, this is that kind of scene where it's like, oh yeah, right, this isn't just like a gumshoe detective and there's fairies, but they look just like us and whatever. Like this is fucking weird, to be in Chicago and, bridges those two worlds and everything like that. So, so Harry, ever intelligent, I guess this is our ride. You think? This will take us there, but we don't have any protection on the other side. Just remember, Harry, I told you this was a bad idea. Preemptive I told you so's. Now I've seen everything. No, I bank I told you so's all the time. That's like,
right.
Standard. I was like, just so you know, I'm voting against this. I'm being overridden, and I'm going to be here to gloat when it turns out terribly. So, yeah. Yep. So chapter 25, more montage. So getting battle ready. But basically there's some description of the carriage taking off and flying and doing its Superman thing. The carriage stops 5 minutes later and the door swung open. So then I think they just walk into the creepy woods. So some more banter. If you make any corny jokes about using the word nevermore, I'm going to punch you. Do you understand me? Never more, I confirmed. Then we both started off after the Raven. So, yeah. Yep. So they're walking through the woods. They're being guided by a Raven. There's some light back in the trees. Let's see. Yeah. And then there's some like fallen trees, which is classic ambush tactics, by the way, guys. Like, seriously, just saying. And then that's where, we see the unicorn. So the unicorn looked like a Budweiser horse, one of the huge draft beasts used for heavy labor. It had to have been 18 hands high, maybe more. It had a broad chest, 4 heavy hooves, forward pricked ears, and a long equine face. That was where its resemblance to a Clydesdale ended. It didn't have a coat. It just had a smooth and slick-looking carapace, all chitinous scales and plates, mixing colors of dark green and midnight black. Its hooves were cloven and stained with old blood. One spiraling horn rose from its forehead, at least 3 feet long and wickedly pointed. The spirals were serrated on the edges, some of them covered with rust-brown stains. A pair of curling horns, like those of a bighorn sheep, curved around the sides of its head from the base of the horn. It didn't have any eyes, just smooth, leathery chitin where they should have been. It tossed its head and its mane, and rotted cobwebs danced around its neck and forelegs, long and tattered as a burial shroud.
I didn't
So,
remember that it had 3 horns from Summer
yeah.
Night.
Yep. Yep. It's freaking weird. It's
Yeah.
like generally kind of the shape of a unicorn, just like generally kind of the shape of a Clydesdale. But, this is something else and scary. So I glanced at her. Unicorns, very dangerous. You go first. So, yeah. Yeah. So, let's see.
Even if they have to get past the guard animal, killing the pet of the person that you're trying to reach is not a good idea to have a happy conversation.
Right. Yeah, literally. They're as part of their banter, Dresden, blow it up. Tempting, but I don't think it will make much of an impression on the mothers if we kill their watchdog. A veil, I don't think unicorns rely on the normal senses. If I remember right, they sense thoughts. In that case, it shouldn't notice you. Ha ha, ho ho, oh, my ribs. I have a better plan. I go through while you distract it. So, with what? I'm fresh out of virginity, and that thing doesn't look much like the unicorns I saw in summer. It's a lot less prancy. So, yeah. Yeah. So, they go back and forth, Peter Pan jokes, stuff like that, because she's got to think happy thoughts. But the plan is, Harry distracts it with fire. It chases him. He hides behind a tree. Elaine grabs it with thoughts and, tries to keep it busy. And that's how he gets into the mother's house.
Yeah.
So,
and this is importantly his idea of leaving her with the watchdog, and he goes and talks to the mothers.
Right.
Which also, to be fair, she says she does not want to talk to the mothers, but
right.
It's not her giving him the idea of here's how we split it up.
Yeah, but also she does prompt him in the sense that like she suggests that it's a guardian, knowing full well that it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
So she does kind of push that misdirection a little bit with some of that information. So, but yeah, so there's a bit of a fight scene. Very cool, very short, because more or less it's a bunch of distractions up to Elaine grabbing a hold of it with thoughts, distracting it, and that sort of thing. Let's see. Yeah, and then he almost gets pulled in by her thoughts, I think. So, yeah, so he gets distracted by memories and then turns away and starts pushing, pushing deeper. So, yeah, now we get a whole bunch of internal monologue about the Never Never. So, the Never Never is a big place. In fact, it's the biggest place. Except not really, kind of, like it's semi-infinite, but when you compare against the universe, I mean, first of all, you can only theoretically access it from like Earth local, and at least the Never Never that we would recognize.
We would recognize.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess because if you go wandering far enough, eventually the old ones are going to eat you. Just saying.
Yeah.
The outsiders.
Like, you could theoretically, and I think Jim has stated so, you could use the Never Never to do space travel, essentially, of using the ways to like get to the moon, to get to Mars.
To get to the moon, yes. Like Mars, maybe, but yeah, like it probably, what it probably turns into is like impractical and dangerous, the sense that like just conventional travel becomes safer and easier and quicker, because it's like how do you make the connections between Earth and say Mars? Right. Theoretically you'd have to get to like Ares domain, and really at that point you ought to just have walked to Mars, instead of trying to get through the Never Never to a bunch of pathways to Ares, and all the things that you had to fight and prove and deal with to get there, versus just strapping a bunch of jet fuel to your butt and launching yourself. So,
Yeah,
but
that's the safer route.
yes. Well, I mean, in that case, you may just explode and then die. But in the other case,
It still might be the safer route.
right, exactly. There could be a lot of other things, and death may or may not be the end. So, yeah. So, he goes on, talks about like a bunch of the, celestial realms that theoretically are out there in the Never Never somewhere. The part of the Never Never closest to the mortal world are almost all controlled by the She. And he had a gut feeling that he was running through the heart of Fairy. Some more description. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, for my notes, basically, he's just he's kind of running through the woods. He's following the crow still while he's musing on all of this. And the crow flies in through a window of their house. I was trying to find the description because, he's still kind of in marshland a little bit. The lights turned out to be a pair of lit windows in a cottage that stood by itself on a slight rise of the ground. Stone obelisks the size of coffins, some fallen and cracked and others still upright, stood scattered in loose rings around the mound. The raven rested on one of them, its beady eyes gleaming. It let out another croaking sound and flew in through an open window of the cottage. So, yep. Yeah. So he goes to knock, and then I think it's Mother Winter is, "Come in, boy. We've been expecting you." Double gulp. So
yeah.
So we get descriptions of Mother Winter, the inside of the cottage. Let's see. Yeah, they're sensing his broken spirit, like not like morale, but literally, that sort of thing. So Mother Summer comes in, and then they're like, "Scars here, some. Stick out your tongue, boy. Stick out your tongue." So strength though, and he can be clever at times. We haven't seen any examples, but
at times it's potential.
Yeah. Right. It would seem your daughter chose ably. So then he figures out Mother Winter, Summer, etc. So who do we get to play them? I mean, that's a dangerous game, right? Because it's like we got to cast these people, but like, they've got to be, matronly. And if we go too far out, like, a decade or so, like, just risk. So
I don't know, like the people I think of, like Helen Mirren would be interesting, but she might not be the right actual age of like Judi Dench would be funny, but also she's like 94, so maybe that's a bit much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with any of those things because you get I cannot remember the actress's name, but like, McGonagall, right?
Yeah, I was about to say her.
Yeah. Yeah. Like almost too recognizable as well, right? Like if we had one or the other of them played and like cowled up for Mother, Winter and whatnot, then, we can do the voice without being distracted by the fact that it's like, yeah, this is the headmaster of Hogwarts that we're talking to, so, but yeah, that was one of the musings I had for my notes and that sort of thing. So
casting for the mothers, I think, is one of those things that's incredibly important, but there's so many options that it makes it really difficult, but also to try to get someone of like the right age, the right vitality. Like if someone that is younger-ish and then you like kind of age them up, or just dress them up as you want. If you had someone in like the 50, 60 range, and then dress them as they need to, because They need to
Well,
seem vital as
yeah,
well.
I need to look up her name because I'm not going to just call her McGonagall this whole time. But Maggie Smith, like Maggie Smith, also plays Wendy in Hook, doesn't she? And so, like, if I'm not misremembering, um, come on, my browser is just not cooperating today. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking somebody else, but like, what it's wild about that because it's kind of like Patrick Stewart, where it's like, man, you've been like 60 for like 40
Right?
years, my dude. So
Yeah.
it is Maggie Smith. Just it didn't load enough of her IMDb. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like Maggie Smith, unfortunately, I guess I don't know how you want to say that, has been cast as this grandmotherly role for like, I mean, yeah, 30 some odd years since the 90s and stuff, right? So it's like if you can
Yeah.
find somebody else like that, with that um kind of gravitas and everything, then that could work.
Meryl
So
Streep, maybe? We probably
yeah.
can't afford her.
Right. Well, I mean, infinite money. So
Yeah.
we could go with like the targeting and just like, and then the casting and stuff, right? Because it's like I'd still like to think that the Dresden Files would be one of those things where it's like you want to tend towards the unknown, right? Somebody that isn't being tied up and recognized with some blockbusters, but we've got to find people that look a certain way, have a certain personality or at least deliverance. They're actors, right? So like,
Hmm.
acting is part of it, whatever. But you know, got to get the look and just be like, look, find us somebody who is a Venn diagram of these 3 or 4 actresses. 1990s Maggie Smith with, etc. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
because
British
it's just
accents are
like,
important too. I'll say that.
right. Yeah, it's just nobody currently comes to mind, right? Where I can be like, oh yeah, she's, I mean, shit, actually, one did just pop into my mind because we just saw her in The Bear, but Jamie Lee Curtis is in The Bear as like the main character's mother. And like it just, to me, it's a testament of how fantastic of an actress she is, because like as often as not, her career is mostly defined by like Halloween, and she's the one of the early scream queens and everything like that. But
Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver.
sure, yeah, like, do we have Sigourney Weaver do Mother Winter, and Jamie Lee Curtis do Summer, or vice versa? Because really, like, where I was getting at is she's a lot more versatile as an actress than some of her roles would suggest, and some people would think.
Yeah.
Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, for example. Like, she's
Yeah.
outside of her typecast kind of character, right? The Bear was another one where it's like, holy shit, that's Jamie Lee Curtis, but she's like unhinged, like, she's got a frenetic kind of energy, but this was toxic. This was something different, that sort of thing. So, because I think of, some of her movies are kind of like, I don't know, whimsical is the word that comes to mind. They're just kind of like a more fun energy. You got True Lies, and then I don't know, a couple others that are like right on the edge of my brain.
Freaky Friday
And
or
then
something.
yeah, that's the exact one, stuff like that. But she's definitely got more range than that, right? So that could be in there. um but yeah, anyway, I don't know. I don't know that it'd be like the exact right thing, but it's like I could see her as a Summer, especially if you know like lean into the costuming as much as anything, right? Where
Yeah.
like at the end of it, you're like, holy shit, that was Jamie Lee Curtis, because it's like, I think she could pull that off. She's not quite a chameleon, but you can see her width of roles and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So
So
uh,
somebody who is a chameleon would be Tilda Swinton, and
sure,
she's like 60, I think. So
okay,
I don't know, but I
so
was
she
saying she
could
could be
do
Mab as
Winter.
well. So
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, Yeah, I think we have a disagreement on like on her madness, but like I can understand why, but like the high she are all supposed to be practically supermodels, and it's not even that she doesn't like look the part, right? But
Mhm.
her beauty is a lot more unconventional, and so it's like with
Yeah,
her
it is
you're either
unconventional.
leaning
It is
into
because
the
of
weird or
how she
you
carries
know
herself. It's like that's like she can be extremely like that ethereal beauty while being very strange. It's one of the
right,
things that like looking at her sometimes like she seems like a fairy and just being very strangely attractive.
sure,
That's what kind of pings to it for me. But like so she could do nearly anybody of the Fae in my opinion.
right. Yeah, okay, so was she in Lion the Witch in a Wardrobe?
She was the witch.
uh was she the witch originally, or did they like recast her later? Uh,
And mm,
she was the original like Ice Queen then.
yeah,
I was thinking it was Kate Blanchett for some reason. Like uh
Galadriel.
yeah,
She would
exactly.
also be very
So
interesting in near any of these roles.
sure. Right. So yeah, options.
Very expensive options.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking to save a buck, Jonathan's got the right suggestion there. So we'll just cast one actress and have,
The
you
same
know.
time, there's an interesting thought. So Mab and Titania are twins, as much as they would say that they're not. Same thing with
Mhm.
Sarissa and Maeve. But Summer Queen Mother was not the original Summer Mother.
That's true. Yeah.
So how different do you want to get with that? With showing that she does not fit the rest of this family dynasty that is there.
Right. Right. Shoot. I had something else pop into my head. Nope. Not you. All right. I'll have to come back to that. Oh, it's Stardust, probably, actually. Um, sorry, Googling noises. Yeah. Who are you played by? Because my brain is not working this morning. Michelle Pfeiffer. So, because I
Okay.
was thinking about her as the evil witch from Stardust, that popped into my head. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I was like, yeah, okay, I could probably see that, you know. So, okay, on track, just a little more for today. Um, let's see. Yeah, apparently had precious little notes of this scene. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's him questioning, and really they're kind of like pushing back on him that it's like you pretty much already know what you need to know, more or less. Um,
Put the pieces
you know,
together in a different shape.
yeah. So they're like, then what is your question? Who killed the Summer Knight? Who stole his mantle? I mean, that's two questions, Harry. Come on. Mother Summer gave me a disappointed glance and sipped her tea. Mother Winter lifted her tea to her hood. I still couldn't see her face, but her hand looked withered and her hand looked withered, the fingers tinged with blue. She lowered a cup and said, "You ask a foolish question, boy. You are more clever than this." What's
They're
that
being
supposed to mean?
extremely kind to
Yeah,
say, "That's a bad question, ask another."
right. Um, it means that who is not as important as why and how, Mother Winter added. Think, boy. What has the theft of the mantle accomplished? And then internal dialogue. So we're going to have this, Oh, right. Yeah, that's where these notes in. So he's thinking, I frowned. War between the courts for one, odd activity in the magical and natural world alike, but mostly the coming war, winter and summer gathering to battle at the stone table. Exactly, Winter whispered. So they're reading his thoughts as well. So it's like, do we convey that? Because it's like that's important to the story kind of, but if we're not doing internal dialogue, then He might as well say it out loud, you know.
But if he's thinking for a minute and then she goes, exactly, and he's startled, it's like, well, if you're going to read my thoughts, I might as well say it out loud.
Sure. And I think he does that. Yeah, literally, since it didn't seem to matter either way, I did my thinking out loud. All right, if that's what we want to go with. When something is stolen, a couple of things can happen to it. It can be carried away where it cannot be reached, hoarded, some are put in, such as dragons do. Yeah, okay. It can be destroyed. No, it can't. Your own sage tells you that. The German fellow with the wild hair, Einstein, I muttered. Okay. But it can be rendered valueless or it can be sold to someone else, both of which are change. I held up a hand. Hold it. Look, as I understand it, this power of the summer night, his mantle, it can't just exist on its own. It has to be inside a vessel. Yes, Winter murmured, with one of the queens or within the night. And it isn't with one of the queens. True. We would sense it if it were so. So it's already in another night, I said, but if that was true, there'd be no imbalance. I scratched my head, and as I did, it slowly dawned on me. Unless it had been changed, unless the new night had been changed, transformed into something else, something that left the power trapped, inert, useless. Both of them regarded me steadily, silently. All right, I have my question. Ask it. How does the mantle pass on from one night to the next? Mother Summer smiled, but the expression was a grim one. It returns to the nearest reflection of itself, to the nearest vessel of summer. She, in turn, chooses the next night. That meant that only one of the queens of summer could be behind it. Titania was out already. She had begun the war against Mab because she didn't know where the mantle was. Mother Summer would not have been telling me this information if she'd been the one to do it. That left only one person. Stars and Stones. Aurora. The two mothers set down their teacups together. Time presses. That which must not be, may be, Winter continued. You, we judge, are the one who may set things aright once more, if you are strong enough, brave enough. They're basically going back and forth, finishing each other's sentences and whatnot. So, whoa, hold your horses, I said. I can't just bring this out to Mab and Titania. Beyond talk now. They go to war. Stop them. You two have to be stronger than Mab and Titania. Make them shut up and listen to you. Not that simple. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going back and forth between the three characters and whatever. So basically, Mother Winter finishes something else that she's been working on, hands it over to Harry. She gives him the unraveling and then has to explain it because he has no idea what he's holding. And then he does realize what he's holding. And he's like, wait, you mean I could use this to undo what the vampires did to Susan? Just wipe it away, make her immortal again? You could, emissary. So, is this a gift? No, but a necessity.
That's an important question.
Yeah, right.
Because are they incurring any kind of debt by giving him something?
Sure.
No, I guess not. If not by their magical rules.
They're also cheating, like in a big way, right? Because what you said, right? There isn't a mutual exchange here. Equivalent exchange, and they're doing it because it's necessary. So.
But he asked a question. In fact, he asked a couple of questions, and they were extremely nice to him to say, that's a bad question, make another one. And also, here's a really important thing that you need. It's like he's getting all of the benefit, but there was some form of a bargain there. Maybe that's enough.
Sure. Yeah. Winter withdrew her frail hands into the sleeves of her robe. Do not fail, boy. Hell's bells, no pressure. Gave each of them a short bow and turned for the door. I stepped over the threshold of the cottage and said, oh, by the way, I apologize if we did any harm to your unicorn on the way in. What unicorn? So, yeah. Freaking weirdo fairy biddies.
Yep.
Yeah. More internal monologue. He gets a kick in his heels, basically, and then he starts making fun of them. Make haste, I rasped, trying to impersonate Winter's voice. We have reached the limits, I said, mimicking Summer. I quickened my pace and frowned over that last comment Winter had made. She had taken almost palpable glee in making it, as though it had given her an opening she wouldn't have otherwise had. What unicorn? I nod over the question. If it was indeed a statement of importance, not just a passing mutter, then it had to mean something. I frowned. It meant that there hadn't been a guardian around the little cottage, or at least not one Mother in Winter had put there. So who had? The answer hit me low in the gut, a sensation of physical sickness coming along with the realization. I stopped and clawed for my sight. I didn't get to it before Grum came out from under a veil, Elaine standing close behind him. He caught me flat-footed. The ogre drove a sledgehammer fist toward my face. There was a flash of impact, a sense of falling, and a cool earth beneath my cheek. Then the scent of Elaine's subtle perfume, then blackness. Chapter 27. So
never going to get to this battle.
We're just really not. We might. I don't know.
We're doing
we're not going to
next year time. At this point.
I know, it's crazy, dude. Yeah. So next time is almost certainly chapter 27, 28. That. What is 27 then?
So it's going to be obviously weird. Elaine, Aurora, Lloyd Slate, and then Rashid.
Well, yeah, because 28 is still like Aurora and them gloating over Dresden. So like my notes say read chapter 27, so I don't really have any notes there. And then chapter 28 is Elaine binds Dresden, and then Aurora says mortal time is racing, the day grows short, come, she opens a way and they leave. So I guess 27 is them gloating and, explaining everything to him. And
evil person villains, monologue thing.
Yeah. Which is probably why it's like, we're just going to read through that and stuff. And then, yeah. So 28, I think it, it's so the, complaining about Elaine, and like deceitful, wicked, clever girl. If this works, I'll buy you a pony. And then a little bit later, after he's launched himself out, and he's like, "Oh God, I hope nobody sees me like this." And then Rashid steps out of the shadows.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're 39 pages to the end, but this book is thick as molasses. So the good news, I guess, is that it looks like chapter 27 is only 4 pages. So then we'll be on to chapter 28 and then pretty much be gearing up for the battle. So if we don't get to the battle and through the battle next time, we'll almost certainly finish it the time after. But yeah, I wish I knew a way to speed these up even more. But, if we want to get kind of a feel for it, some of the scenes are kind of important to discuss, I feel like.
Yeah.
So. And it kind of begs the question that it's like, I feel like even though Summer Night is a much shorter book than Grave Peril, it's at least as thick or thicker in the plot. And so like, if Grave Peril, becomes like its own season, for example, whereas like we're trying to do, 2 books a season for other things, or at least like 6 episode, seasons or something like that. Do we cut a lot of this fluff out? Because I feel like it's kind of important. Otherwise it wouldn't have taken us this long.
Yeah.
And so it's only 200 pages, but holy crap, like we could read this in an afternoon, but getting all the scene changes done and all the plot delivered and everything takes a while,
I mean, there's very little that I would want to cut out of this book because I really enjoy it. There's not much to want to condense out of it. It's just having to strike the balance of showing the things that are important that do not reveal themselves as being important yet.
Right.
And keeping it there. So keeping it true to the actual plot mechanics in the background, because sometimes these really small changes can lead to logical inconsistencies later.
Right.
If you've been following any of the drama with House of the Dragon, that's been kind of funny to at least read about. It's like we cannot afford to do that for something that we care so much about. So even a small thing of we just condense some characters. No, you can't do that. Not when they're doing really specific roles. So
well, and Summer Night becomes like foundational, because there are a
Yes.
lot of fairy things that are introduced in this book that are going to pay dividends later. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Like we need to do our best to keep most of that there. And I think another thing worth considering is like, if we were to do this, if we are making changes, then maybe we need to create a second, like you've got your Bible, and then we create a second Bible of like what we actually did in the show, like as far as an outline is, and like, oh, we actually had Murphy do this instead of Susan, or we
Right.
actually had this character deliver this line, or those little deviations can help with that inconsistency, right? And I'm not
Mhm.
sure if that's done, right? I'm not sure if that's been done in, like take The Witcher, for example, take House of the Dragon, take all of these other adaptations, right? They just make these deviations, and I don't like, they don't give a shit about consistency in the first place, right? So they almost certainly aren't doing it. But that would help. It certainly wouldn't hurt. Where it's like, oh yeah, shit, we actually had this character doing that instead. You know, so
Right. It does feel like every change needs to have like a sense of cost balance to it of like, is this better because it's going to save time? It's going to just be easier to show, but what ramifications does it have down the road? And like the first time reading through Summer Night, you don't realize how important some of these details are. And
right,
then like just the stone table, that type of discussion that we had of like, what does it look like later? What is it going to be like later? Or just like, is Elaine going to say the certain thing or not? Is like, was it somebody else that took him to the mothers instead of Elaine because it was easier to just say, yeah, let's have Leah do it? Completely changes the dynamic of what he walks into and how he gets out of it.
sure. I'm going to drop a bomb on this right now, and I want everybody to mark the day and the time and all of that stuff, because it just occurred to me that it's like, in order to avoid the nonsense that's come out of both Game of Thrones shows and that sort of thing, well, when we start this, we go into it understanding that this is one of the alternate universes, but it's a very close local universe to Harry, so we're going to get as close as we can. And then that way, if it does deviate to be like, oh well, actually Molly does this instead of Murphy, or whatever the case may be down the line, if we ever get done with the story before we get to like Mirror Mirror in this case, because it's not out yet, right? If we ever caught up and we didn't get to Mirror Mirror, rather than trying to anticipate what Jim does, Nega Harry comes in and assassinates our Harry, and then that's the end of the show. Like that, we just roll credits, and then everybody can be mad at us that, wait, what the fuck? So I just spoiled the entire arc for our show here. That if we ever deviate so far, or we ever think that we're like, oh yeah, we're totally gonna try and guess what they're done, because it's like, even if you do, right, even if we do guess what Jim would be writing, or is hopefully in the middle of writing right now, he would have to change it, wouldn't he? So it's like, you're never going to be right. And I feel like that's what's going on with George Martin, and I think that's what most people
Not
assume,
quite.
right? Is
But
that,
so one, just because if we guessed right, he would not necessarily need to change it. It could be like, actually, we're paying attention to the plot lines that he's done, like all of the foreshadowing and all those hints. So
sure.
if he changed it just because we guessed right, that would be really dumb. I don't think he would do that.
Mm,
Also, generally, we want him involved in these kinds of decisions of like, we're going to make this change. Is this going to screw up anything later? Ask the guy that has it all in his head first.
right.
Um,
If he can, or even will tell you anyway. So,
right. But if he can just say, don't do this thing, that can be
right.
enough to like, okay, we won't do that thing. Um, and some the other shit going on with Game of Thrones, it does not even like, so with House of the Dragon, at least the book that they're basing that series on is already done and finished. They have the source material. They deviated
Right.
anyway. That's the
Right.
problem.
Fair.
Yeah. So if we ever got caught up in doing the mirror mirror thing, that would be a funny way out of it. And then we just like, okay, we're going to continue on with the other prime timeline now. But at the rate that we go, we will never get caught up. We're fine. We're perfectly safe.
Look, man, I don't know about all that. I mean, it's like, sure, we should be like filming the first season right now if we were going to be truly worried about it, but it is taking us about 3 years to get a new book. So, like, we're pretty much a book every 3 years instead of every 6 months right now. So
if we get caught up, then
but,
you know it. Short stories.
right. which
We've got stuff.
we've still gone back and forth on, like, do we just film those as shorts between seasons, or add in episodes? Like, I would still love to see, like, backup be an episode.
Yeah.
I think there's enough material there that it could be an episode to shake up the book a little bit or something like that. But and he's done us the favor of telling us where they kind of take place in the canon, more or less. So
Yeah, and since those are all basically between books, I would put them out as standalone episodes in between the other seasons.
Right. We'll pick up Doctor Who's tact of doing Christmas specials, and in between our 2 years between seasons, like some of these shows do. So
yeah.
But okie dokie. All right, Andreas, take us out. Okay. So as a reminder, if you joined us late, we're going to be talking about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood next week, and I'm going to be on the firing line this time. So while it'll kind of revolve around me a little bit, at least there will be more of us taking shots, and I'll be dodging more. And I think that's the gist of it. So 2 weeks, we'll do our best to finish this off, but at the very least, we should get to the finale battle and the aftermath leading up to that. But I think we might. Maybe it'll even go long, because chapter 27 so short, that we've been doing about 2 or 3 chapters each time. So maybe we'll just go like an hour and a half episode and just get it all done. So
instead of having it linger again, just like
there's precedence. So
yeah. We spent 4 hours on the last one for Codex Alera.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about Aeronauts Windlass and how long that took? So
hey, I did that in an hour. 10% of a book in an hour.
That was, right. But that was the finale. And so if 10% was a lot, that means how many of those episodes did we do? Like at least 10?
I don't even want to count.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, next time.